The following video may include language that is not suitable for children. There could be F-bombs, S-bombs, and other forms of word vomit. I would not watch this in a church. I would not watch this while at work. I would not watch this with my fam. I'm trying to warn you. I really am. This is a Christian channel, but I cover secular content. On that note, hide your kids and hide your wife.
One day I get a call out the blue letting me know that I and the other girls in my chapter were being investigated for hazing. And between the day I got that call and maybe 2 to 3 weeks later, I was expelled.
Welcome back to my channel. I am Miss Titus 2 and I'm here with another video on why Christians should think twice before pledging a Greek lettered organization. Specifically a Black Greek lettered organization. So if you're a Christian and you're contemplating whether or not you should pledge, then you've come to the right place. Now in my last video, I gave y'all several reasons why I think membership in a BGLO is a bad idea for believers. So we've already talked about the issue of sexual immorality in the organizations, but today we're going to focus on hazing, specifically underground pledging and how it clashes with the gospel. Webster's dictionary defines hazing as an initiation process that involves harassment. Here's a more detailed description of hazing that I pulled from a university's website. It says hazing is defined as any action taken or situation created which produces mental or physical discomfort, embarrassment, harassment, or ridicule. Such activities and situations include assault in any form, creation of excessive fatigue, physical and psychological shocks, wearing apparel which is conspicuous,
Wearing apparel which is conspicuous and not normally in good taste, nudity, situations or tasks that interfere with scholastic activities, and any other activities which are not consistent with the regulations and policies of the university, and otherwise isolate or create different standards for new members for the purpose of initiation or admission into or affiliation with a chartered or non-chartered student organization.
Alright, so hazing has been a staple in college Greek life for more than 100 years, but it's not exclusive to Black Greek organizations. However, hazing in Black Greek lettered organizations manifests itself a little differently than it does in other organizations, but I'll talk about those differences in a future video. Now, the one thing that's consistent in fraternity and sorority hazing across the board are the countless number of victims who have been affected by it. We're barely halfway through 2021 and we've already seen 2 highly publicized hazing related deaths.
Dalen, along with 7 others who've been named, were all charged for various crimes in Fultz's alleged hazing death back in March.
His family believes his death was the result of hazing while he was rushing Delta Chi.
20-year-old Stone Fultz and 19-year-old Adam Oakes both died this year following fraternity rush events. And more recently, Bloomsburg University decided to completely eliminate Greek life on campus after the death of a male and female student within the last 20 months. And just in case you were wondering, BGLOs weren't exempt from making the headlines related to hazing this year either. Just this past March, Louisiana's own Southern University had to suspend the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity after 2 students were hospitalized, and then also the AKA sorority because of unsanctioned activities.
Yeah, guys, this one involves Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority on Southern's campus. Now, we don't know a whole lot about this, but a spokeswoman for the university confirming to me just within the last hour they have received a complaint about potential activities that were unsanctioned with the organization. We're also told the women in that sorority have been hit with a cease and desist order just days after a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, who also was put under the microscope for alleged hazing at Southern. Greg?
It was a serious
matter? Yes. A very serious matter, yes, yes.
But as serious as hazing is, television and film tend to make light of the situation. Shows like A Different World put a comedic spin on it. You know, they make it look like harmless horseplay.
Get that island blood flowing. It takes some smooth moves to be getting.
And even in the movie Stomp the Yard, they completely downplayed it. But then on the other extreme of film adaptations of Black Greek life, you got gritty movies like He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother that shows this really barbaric and even grotesque side of hazing. Now, as disgusting as that was, I've actually heard stories of people doing things like that and much worse to get into the organization of their choice. At this point, you're probably thinking, what in the world could be worse than swapping spit with somebody you barely know? Well,
when I got in trouble, I had to eat. Yeah, it wasn't. Well, I did eat onion too, but it was like all this mixture. Everything was edible technically, but it's all mixed together, and I got a weak stomach. So I'm in this corner, right, and I'm drinking this stuff, and it come back up. And if you throw up on the floor, you get into more trouble. So I throw it back up in the cup. My line drunk that cup, so they drunk my cup. We had to pass the yolk through each other's mouths.
We were in a dark barn. I mean, it was something out of a really like a horror movie. And then, of course, we had to drink this potion, which, of course, I found out later on what it was when I was done being a recruit and, you know, began recruiting others. What was in that potion? It was sick. It was demonic, is what it was. Things ranging from urine, fecal material, and other type of substances, alcohol, grain alcohol, covered up by Kool-Aid.
Now, luckily, I don't know anybody personally who ever admitted to doing anything that nasty to get into an organization. So I'm hoping that those are isolated events. But from what I've heard from my friends who did pledge Nphc organizations, there are a lot of practices that are pretty common when it comes to underground pledging. Now, obviously, I don't know from my own personal experience what it's like to pledge a sorority, but from what I heard, they treat the girls online like the inmates treat those kids on Beyond Scared Straight.
And you, we heard about you before you even got up here. While you have a chance, you need to be trying to get an education because your looks ain't gonna get you paid. Because you're not that cute. And your hair is uneven. You look dusty.
I feel that heat you got on me. I can fight with nails. Don't get it twisted. I want every one of y'all to give me a reason to go off. Don't let my hair fool you. Don't let my hair fool you. I knock all y'all ass out, one by one. I'm not playing no games with y'all.
Just telling you what I was told. But on a serious note, hazing is no laughing matter, and it officially stopped being a laughing matter in 1990 when all the Nphc organizations decided collectively to ban hazing after the death of 18-year-old Morehouse student Joel Harris. Details surrounding Joel's death are still a bit of a mystery, but it was confirmed that he was pledging the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and met up with some of the fraternity members at an off-campus apartment. The LA Times reported on the final moments leading up to Joel Harris's death. Joel was one of 19 Morehouse students in the room who wanted to pledge Alpha Phi Alpha. They were being overseen by fraternity members, though the school-sanctioned pledging period hadn't yet begun. To this day, Harris doesn't know exactly what happened to her son at that secret gathering. His death was attributed to an irregular heart rhythm, the result of a congenital defect. Investigators from the Cobb County Medical Examiner's Office found that Joel Harris and the other aspiring pledges were being hazed. Hours before he died, Joel had been punched in the chest and slapped in the face as part of a ritual that eyewitnesses called thunder and lightning. It's unclear whether he was being hit when he collapsed. The medical examiner's report didn't declare the hazing to be a direct cause of Joel's death, but it stated that he was under an intensive amount of anxiety and stress that night. Joel's death appears to be the straw that broke the camel's back, and Nphc knew that they had to take action in an effort to keep this from happening to another student. This obviously was a tragic story, and it never should have happened to Joel, but unfortunately, Joel is just one of many victims before him. Like I said earlier, hazing has occurred on American college campuses for over a century. But hazing in institutions of higher learning actually goes back much further than that. Believe it or not, hazing can be traced to
medieval times.
In the book Black Greek 101, author Walter M. Kimbrough shares a brief history on hazing. Hank Noor, an author who's an expert on hazing in fraternities, sororities, high schools, and athletic teams, chronicles the history of hazing in the book Wrongs of Passage. He indicates that for centuries there have been activities that could be described as hazing.
According to Noor, a ritualization of practices now better termed hazing occurred in the medieval universities. He indicates in the 13th through 15th centuries, it was understood that boys who wished to gain the status afforded by attending a school of learning would have to submit to brutal hazing by older students, just as they had to pay for university fees and to buy books. As older students began routinely hazing newcomers, such practices became became ritualized. These practices soon developed identities.
Newer goes on to explain the evolution of hazing in Europe as it moved from beanie cap requirements to penalism, and then later into a process known as fagging. Penalism was a short-term and sometimes a one-time event where freshmen at German universities were called penals, and they had to carry pen cases at lectures, wear funny clothes, endure physical abuse, and sometimes even be extorted for money.
Oh, hell no!
Crazy, right? Well, Great Britain took penalism a step further and it morphed into what we call fagging. Fagging included personal menial service and drudgery, characteristics that were not a part of penalism. As part of fagging, each upperclassman had his personal fag. The system was justified under the same ideology of penalism, that freshmen were uncivilized, as a means to teach humility and proper behavior.
Build character, Walter.
That's how good Greeks are made.
This process lasted for a year and was an around-the-clock activity. According to some accounts, fagging ended in 1798 due to persuasion by a first-year student, but other accounts indicate that it continued readily into the 19th century. Fast forward to the mid-1800s, and now hazing had become a common practice on American college campuses.
Hazing stressed perpetrating crude pranks rather than the personal servitude of fagging, and included running errands for upperclassmen and obeying their orders. Some accounts describe hazing as a much more violent activity. Sophomores would fight freshmen in activities called either freshman-sophomore rushes or class battle royals. These fights were responsible for deaths at several universities. In addition, sophomores were known to steal the personal effects of freshmen and humiliate them. Humiliation could include being tarred and feathered in the town square. Some incidents revealed the brutal nature of hazing.
As early as 1873 at Cornell, a pledge to the Kappa Alpha Society died after being blindfolded and told to find his way home, only to be assisted by his brothers who removed the blindfold but became lost as well, and all three fell over a cliff. Only the pledge died in the accident. I think at this point we can all agree that hazing is not just problematic, but in a lot of cases it can be flat out danger! And for that reason, I can applaud Nphc for making the decision to cancel hazing. Or at least trying to. Now, in light of recent events and that short history lesson, I'm sure you probably picked up on some red flags and clear indicators that hazing is something Christians probably shouldn't be participating in. From a biblical standpoint, what is wrong with hazing? Well, I can't list everything, but there's a couple of things wrong with it. As I so eloquently pointed out earlier, it can be danger! But even further than that, it perpetuates a culture of abusive behavior. Yeah, hazing can be both physically and mentally abusive. And I'm sorry, but you just not gonna find any scriptures that back up cussing folk out or telling somebody that they're not good enough to be in your organization. Now in Galatians chapter 5, Paul tells the Galatians not to operate in the works of the flesh. Now the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, moral impurity, promiscuity, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and anything similar. I tell you about these things in advance, as I told you before, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Then Paul goes on to list the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, gentleness, and self-control. Now ask yourself, does this come across as kind?
That's what happened. Yep, sure does. Yep. That's what happened. Like a runaway slave, boy. Does that hurt? Does it hurt? No, sir. It don't hurt. You sure? You sure about me? It don't hurt? No, sir. You sound like it hurt. How dare you?
Now at the end of the day, and the beginning of the day for that matter, we have to treat all people with respect because everyone is made in the image of God. Being in a fraternity or a sorority does not make you exempt from the command to love your neighbor as yourself. In a nutshell, if God doesn't accept the mistreatment of people, then we shouldn't either. Now, if you got something out of this video, then please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And please be on the lookout for my next video where I will break down even more reasons why hazing is a bad idea. There's a lot more to be said here. And if you missed my first installment of why I believe Christians should not pledge BGLOs, then click this video over here. Shalom, grace and peace.